All right, we're gonna move into our next session. We'll give a 30-second breather here. I want to reiterate the idea and the thinking that this is about alignment and partnership, and that the desire to move forward in support of workforce development requires collaboration. And when we talk about collaboration, we need to think about our employer partners. We need to think about our economic development. I cannot, at this moment, think of a better next panel to continue today's conversation. Driving NYC's economic engine. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator, Ben Max, and let's welcome our panelist, Kathy Wylde, President and CEO of the Partnership for New York City. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, ETC, for having me back. I'm happy to come. Happy to be part of the conference just about every year. So I enjoy being here and very happy to be in conversation today with Kathy Wylde. It is always good to talk about what's happening in New York City with you, and especially here today in terms of the economy, jobs, and workforce development. Say a little bit just first about how the Partnership for New York City organizes businesses and tries to influence what's happening in New York City around the economy and jobs.
So, is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So the partnership was organized to represent business working in the interests of the city. So it's an organization, membership organization of business leaders. And one of our top priorities has obviously been workforce development, since the city's main attraction and main asset for employers is the top talent, the quality of its workforce, and focusing on the preparation and opportunities, the economic opportunities, the upward mobility of that workforce is incredibly important to the business community, and so this has been an area of focus.
We'll get into a lot on workforce development, but how's the economy right now from your perspective, your members' perspective? Where are we right now? It's obviously a very tricky time with a big change in presidential administrations coming in. We've got a mayoral election coming up. There's a lot of turmoil. There's global conflict, but how's the economy right now from your perspective?
Well, the politics are a mess, as you point out, but the economy is actually great. We have the largest economy in history at over $1 trillion. We've got more private sector jobs than we've ever had at 4.2 million. We had job postings outstanding at the moment of 136,000, so we've got plenty of jobs. We've got basically two big problems in this area. One is preparation of people to have the skills to be able to fulfill the jobs, because most of the jobs that are posted are either in the tech sector, require tech requirements, marketing, sales. The jobs that pay enough to be able to live in New York City are basically require skills, and that we've got a large population that doesn't have those skills. The answer should not just be more foreign immigration. The answer should be upgrading those who are here. We've got 561,000 adults on public assistance in this city. And when you talk about the impact of the workforce challenge on the economy, it's the drain of so many people that are here who cannot afford to be here because they aren't prepared or haven't been connected to the jobs. So we've got the jobs. We've got a huge skills gap that we have to fill. And then the other piece is, which is great, that the Adams administration and the Deputy Mayor, Maria Torres Springer, Abby Jo Siegel have taken on, how do we create a system with all of you that actually can take this complicated, siloed city and move people into those jobs.
So say a little bit more, you got at it there a bit, but say a little bit more about the labor market and the workforce needs of the employers, of the biggest employers, especially in New York City right now. You said there's a lot of tech jobs or jobs that require some version of tech skills, but say a little bit more about the need, what jobs are most prevalent, the growth sectors and industries, from your sort of big perch view, where are those opportunities and where's the growth and what should we be looking ahead the next year, 5 years, even 10 years about where the growth will be?
Well, the high growth area has been the tech sector, but that's still, but on the other hand, and that's in terms of the professional jobs, the high quality jobs. The healthcare sector has 1 million jobs, and that's the other high growth sector, but those are largely, to a large extent, are jobs that are not paying enough to live in New York City. So that's a problem. The tech jobs, and that's across all sectors, the financial sector, the marketing sector, require tech talent. Those jobs are growing, but that's less than 300,000 jobs compared to 1 million in the healthcare sector. So there's some imbalance there. And a lot of the jobs that are accessible to folks who have relatively limited education in business services, administrative work, et cetera, those jobs have been moving out of New York for 30 years to lower cost locations. And it's because we're the most expensive city in the world to live and do business. Third most expensive city in the world, most expensive city in America. And that's only happened in the past decade. We were not always in that category. So New York, it's not your imagination like with crime. New York is less affordable than it used to be. And that's happened very quickly, and we have to start looking at the reasons why. And it's not just high rent, it's a whole bunch of factors.
Well, let's stick with that for a second. You take a broad, expansive view of economic health, of growth of the city, of the health of the city, which of course includes what's happening around workforce development, job training, economic growth, city, state, federal policy that relates to the ability for the economy to grow and for there to be increased job opportunities. But in terms of the increase in cost of living, in terms of the challenges of wealth gaps in the city, are there some solutions that you are pointing to, that you are advocating for to city and state leaders, especially around the affordability crisis, around the wage gaps?
Well, most immediately, obviously, there are two things. Number one, tomorrow, hopefully the City Council will pass City of Yes for affordable housing. So, very important. It is the first real change in our zoning code since 1961. And it is a major effort to bring on more housing at a lower cost, getting government out of the way. So that's one thing. And the whole housing area, I think, needs a revisit in terms of who's at the table, figuring out, I mean, in the 80s, when the government had no money, the not-for-profit sector really stepped up and worked with the banks and the builders and collectively the community development organizations, and we built housing at a cost that was affordable. We had the benefit of city-owned free land, et cetera, but we really were focused. We had an affordable housing industry that really functioned. We lost those programs. We haven't had the kind of programs that support scalable, affordable housing development. We've got to bring those back. I think the $5 billion package that the City Council and the governor and the mayor put together as part of the City of Yes effort is going to go a long way to do that, but it can't be with the same existing programs we have today. We have to develop new programs, and everybody has to give something to that effort, and it has to have nonprofit leadership, and I hope that the Community Preservation Corporation, LISC, Enterprise, these other not-for-profit intermediaries will step up and be able to help make sure that we can implement those $5 billion in the most effective way. That has not characterized our housing programs of the last decade. Anyhow.
And
oh, I have another one.
Yeah, please.
Congestion pricing. Can we please pass congestion pricing?
It's happening. Is it going to?
Because we got to pay for goods. We have to improve the public transit system. We have to modernize it. And believe me, you either pay for it through the vehicles, either pay for it through congestion pricing, or fares are going to go up, taxes are going to go up, and there is no free solution to this problem. But right now, taxes pay 44% of the MTA revenues, fare payers pay 27% of the MTA revenues, and drivers that are coming into the city, 700,000 vehicles a day, pay only 13%. So let's even it out, please.
It's supposed to start in a
January
few weeks,
5th.
and then we'll see what happens under.
If Phil Murphy wins his lawsuit, we'll shoot him. No.
We'll see what Donald Trump and Republicans in Washington.
That
have
was
to
a
say
joke,
about
but
it.
not a good one.
Also, just to add to your housing point, the question of what's happening in the New York City suburbs is a very big one in terms of alleviating pressure on the housing market. So on workforce development, two parts. What do you see happening among your members? What is the private sector doing right now or looking at on workforce development? And what I can come back to the second part in a minute, but the second one will be, what do you want from the workforce development sector here to think about so that there is more preparation, there are more people coming to fill the jobs that you mentioned earlier through the systems we have in place, or a system that is reformed to be more effective?
So I think there is a real renewed commitment, more than I've ever seen, by the employers in the city to take on the workforce challenge. And I think that reflects a lot on the fact that the Adams administration has really said we're committed to making government and our programs and our activities more employer friendly, to listen to what employers really need, and to not just treat this as philanthropic, to reference the last panel, but to treat this as an investment in your future, in the future of your business, and make it really a mainline business commitment to develop a good talent pool within New York City. So I think employers really feel that. They're responding to it. The fact that Jamie Dimon organized the Jobs Council and has made a major commitment to the training and hiring and working with the city. There are a number of apprenticeship, internship programs that Abby's been working to activate for years that are coming online and that are beginning to scale. There is the fragmentation in the system, which I know you all are trying to deal with now, but the fragmentation is a real disadvantage. The bureaucracy has still not been tamed in terms of what it takes to actually launch programs. Employers are not going to make a major investment in a program that produces 12 people a year or whatever. They want to see that things really are scalable. They want to see a quality pipeline. There's been a lot of work done with the CUNY colleges that I think shows more progress than I've seen in the past 20 years, where the colleges are really starting to embrace updating their curriculum and their folks to reflect what employers need. As Andrew Richet mentioned to me just a few minutes ago when I was coming up, the impact of AI is going to be huge, and it's going to require revolutionary change in how we prepare people for the workplace. That's a big challenge. Will the workforce community be organized in a way that you can deal with employer needs at scale, that they don't have to go one by one with the groups and their different requirements and the programs and their requirements? It's got to be really streamlined. When we surveyed, beginning of the de Blasio administration, they were trying to figure out how to deal with the workforce thing, and we surveyed employers. What we were really looking at CTE and the K through 12, and we surveyed employers about internships for kids. And those who had done internships, and there were only a couple thousand internships a year at the time, but those who had done them said, we said, what's the biggest obstacle? And we thought, well, it would be the kids weren't well prepared or the teachers weren't cooperative or whatever. No, it was the bureaucracy at the DOE, the length of time that it took to get decisions and to accomplish anything. So, so that's what you really have to figure on producing for employers is streamline process and then be responsive to what they're looking for. Employers do a lot of their own training, but they're looking for people who are ready to be in a workplace and be productive.
So that's exactly where I was going next. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but there's obviously been a discussion for a long time. I know I've been coming to this conference many years out of the last decade, and there's very often conversation around the key shift has been that a lot of employers want more of those sort of softer skills, right? Workplace readiness, that you are ready to come, be professional, creative thinking, collaboration, these types of skills, and then you can be trained in whatever the specifics of the industry, sector, business might be. Is that still where we are, or is it because of some of the tech discussion earlier that there are some more sort of harder requirements that employers are often looking for?
Well, it obviously depends on the job, and there are tech requirements, but it's like generational as far as I can tell. I mean, you talk to Fred Wilson and the Computer Science for All, and he said, it has to start in kindergarten. So we've got a large population of people that are well beyond kindergarten who aren't going to have that benefit. So I think it's the answer to the question is in different segments, but no, the willingness to work starts there. But it's preparing people to know how to make the climb up the ladder, because as all of us know, our first job is not hopefully going to be our last job. And in the city, to keep up, you basically have to be able to continue to learn. And there are a number of opportunities now. Our educational institutions all offer opportunities for learning, lifetime learning, and that's what employers are looking for. They're looking for people that are constantly growing, and I think that's what we all want for our own lives and for those of our fellow residents.
You mentioned CUNY, the city's public university system, and you echoed something that the chancellor said to me when I interviewed him probably a year and a half ago, about sort of really trying to rethink how CUNY is a workforce development pipeline in itself. What about the private institutions in the city? Are you seeing progress there? Are they partnering more with the city's business community? Is there more that could be done to partner the business community, folks in this room, and the private education, higher education institutions?
Interesting question. The private institutions are all over the map in terms of their relationships with employers. In general, they do a pretty good job. And you've got examples. I mean, it ranges. It's a full range. It's from Columbia to PACE, which is very oriented at getting people ready for jobs, whereas some of them are very liberal artsy oriented. But I would say, actually, yesterday I met with two college presidents, Linda Mills at NYU and Joel Towers, the new president at the New School. And they are both really on top of these issues and really thoughtful about both their role in New York City, their role in upward mobility of the population. And I found those conversations really encouraging, that they're on top of it, that they are looking for collaboration with business and with the broader nonprofit and civic community and with local government.
You talked a little bit earlier about one key for the sort of workforce development system that you see in need of improvement is the idea of scale, trying to reduce redundancy, improving scale. What are some other things? Is there room for improvement on data collection, data transparency, outcome evaluation? What else do you see as room for improvement in those sectors?
A decade ago or more, we worked with the legislature to pass the wage reporting system so that there would be a way for public institutions to measure the impact of educational and workforce development programs over time by the jobs somebody gets over time. That has been grossly underutilized. It turned into a bureaucratic nightmare trying to get the information. I think we ought to be refocused on how to make that work so we really can evaluate, particularly since the economy is changing so quickly and the job requirements are changing so quickly. We really need to measure in over a period of time what are the outcomes of some of these programs. We hang on, and so much of our stuff in New York State is legislated in Albany, and we're kind of changing that legislation takes forever, and so we're kind of, and the regulations coming out of the state education department in particular, and all that stuff is difficult. There's some new programs. Juke Su, who's maybe here, I don't know, at Pursuit has proposed legislation in Albany that would create incentives for social bonds that would pay for workforce training that in turn would be, the debt would be amortized by the successful employment of people, which creates a positive incentive. The other thing that I have suggested, I've got a little list of things that I think the Trump administration and the Republican Congress could do that would be good. It's a short list, but but the one I came up, one is that I have already recommended to the new Commerce Secretary is move WIOA funding from the Department of Labor to the Department of Commerce. Labor is a regulator of employers, and they're much more likely to work cooperatively and transparently with the Labor Department than they would be if this were in the Department of Commerce. I would have said the Department of Education, but that may be gone, so why bother?
In terms of the providers and the trainers in this room and getting a better, even more of a better sense of what what employers are looking for, what do you encourage people to do? Are there
work through intermediaries. In the housing world, when we were most successful in producing housing in the 80s and early 90s, we worked through intermediary organizations that could aggregate the requests and the interests and the needs of a bunch of different organizations across the boroughs. And I think we had a really efficient system for a long time that we ought to be rebuilding in housing. But I think in workforce, you've never had such an effective system. I think Greg's done a great job with this organization on a policy basis, but now today's about practice, not policy. I wouldn't be at the policy meeting. But on a practical basis, you really need one voice to speak for a sector to employers writ large, so that to simplify things and to make it easy as possible for them to sift through the mishigas of all the different organizations and the subsets of training activities and the different special needs populations and all that stuff, which, the more of that hits them, the less they do. So I think the Jobs Council is an example with large employers, but I think we need other supporting them, but we need other examples as well, where you figure out within the infrastructure of your various organizations, how do you create one voice to represent a series of interests with employers and then go after that sector. Certainly that's true with small employers, dealing with the chambers of commerce employers, et cetera. It's just impossible otherwise. Those who don't have employers without human resource departments, they can't even think about how to navigate this stuff. So unless you have a special local relationship with a few, but you need more than that. We need to figure out how to aggregate it.
And if you or one of your member companies is looking at a workforce development program, what are you looking at first? You want to see metrics for outcomes? Do you want to see the focus of the skills? Do you want to see, what would be sort of the first couple of things you want to hear from somebody if you're talking to somebody who's doing workforce development about the efficacy of the work they're doing?
Do they have the people I want? I mean,
yeah.
are they producing the people with the skills that I need. So it's a very practical, and it doesn't take too long for an employer to figure that out.
Let's, in our last couple minutes, zoom back out in a big way. I started early on saying mayoral race coming up, new president coming in, and administration at the federal level, obviously different congressional picture. We have seen some of a massive influx of economic development and infrastructure dollars coming into New York over the last several years, but a lot of what's been passed in Washington is still coming out the door. Do you have
hope.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting at. Do you have concerns, hopes for what's been put in place and where it goes next under new leadership at the federal level, possibly new leadership at the mayoral level? What's sort of coming next in terms of those relationships between what's happening at the federal government, the local government, and the business community?
Well, I am guessing, I'm not sure, but I am guessing that Donald Trump does not want New York City to fall apart on his watch. He's proud of his heritage here, and really, and so I'm relatively optimistic. I mean, I think that the mayor and governor have both taken very smart tactical positions. I think Hakeem Jeffries has been extraordinarily effective and will be in navigating this. So as will be Senator Schumer. I think we're in a good position in terms of the political leadership we have right now to deal with the changes in Washington. And I will tell you, the business community is very conscious of the threats to New York that could come in the worst case situation, and very eager to use their clout to be supportive. So I think if the rhetoric stays relatively friendly or at least neutral, if we can keep the rhetoric down, I think we've got a good shot at trying to figure out where there are opportunities. I mean, the last time we had a Republican, not the last time, but 2 times ago when we had a Republican president and Republican leadership in both houses, we almost passed comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship for 11 million undocumented people, and with a combination of family reunification and merit-based allowances. I mean, we almost accomplished something really great. I think we've got to look for those opportunities and figure out how to do that.
And when you, in our last moment here, when you look at the city political and policy playing field, there's a mayoral election unfolding. What do you want to hear from that race, whether Mayor Adams is going to be successful in his reelection or there's going to be a new mayor? There's going to be a pretty robust conversation over the next year in a mayoral race, but especially the next 6 months or so till the primary. What do you want to hear from those political candidates and leaders relative to the city's economic health?
Not political rhetoric. Focus on substantive conversations. I think New York has got to get back to being a place where we're talking practical realities, how we achieve the best for everybody, working across labor, business, nonprofit sectors, engaging with our universities in a robust way to draw on their resources to support policy and program decisions. So I think we've got to go back to where we were when we didn't expect government to solve every problem.
Okay. We will leave it there. Kathy Wylde, thank you very much. There's about to be some breakout groups. I don't know if Greg's coming up, but I will be back here at 3:30 with Andrew Kimball, the president and CEO of the New York City Economic Development Corporation. So please join us again for that. Are you making an announcement? Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you, Kathy Wylde, for all that insight and support and nuggets of wisdom for sharing this with us today.